Hi everybody, this is Ramesh, our English subject. Today in this session I would like to discuss about the communication and interactions. They are very important in the teaching learning process. So let us start our class. So communication. The word was derived from the Latin. In the Latin what we call communication is nothing but communicate or communis we use in the Latin. So what is the meaning of the communicate? Communicate is nothing but to participate, to share or to make common. Means here what we share? We share our ideas, thoughts, opinions or emotions to one person or more than one person is called that communicate. Communicate is nothing but communication. That word comes from the Latin. So that is the definition of the communication. What is the actual definition of the communication? Means here it is an exchange of ideas. It is an exchange of facts. It is exchange of opinions or emotions of two or more than person is called that communication. I hope you understand the definition of the communications. So to make the communication, we should be followed one process. What is the process of the communication? The process of the communication, so the sender is important, encoding is important, message is very important, and next channel, decoding, receiver, feedback. This process, the communication should be followed that. Who is the sender? Sender means who is passing the message to other person is called the sender. So sender, first of all, he create what the message he want to say that. And he create what the message is how to say to the receiver. So like he decided what kind of the message he passed to other person. That the person is called the sender. Now here sender is not only considered a person. Whatever the source we can consider. Whatever the source to pass to other person is called sender, we can say that here. So what the message the sender is passing, there should be order, that order should be followed, that is called encoding. Encoding means that message what the message is prepared, that message must be followed one order, that is called the encoding. So the sender encode the message. Message is nothing but so the thought, idea. Understand what the idea, what the thought you want to share to other person, that is called the message. So the message must be encoded by the sender. So how the sender is encoded the message means by the channel, by using the channel. What the channel, what type of channel we using? Nowadays we are using the mobile phone, internet, understand, newspaper, whatever the channel. His thoughts or feelings or emotions, he pass the message through the channel. Channel is nothing but I say that mobile phone, internet, newspaper, whatever that. He uses the channel to pass a message to the receiver. That is a process. Now here, when he send the message, how the receiver decode? The decode is also very important. What the sender pass the message, the receiver must be decoded in the correct order. Then the receiver understand what the sender sending the message. So this is the process. Now after understand the receiver, what the message the receiver understand, he give the feedback to the sender. Again the sender started. I think what is the positive or what is the negative. He took the feedback from the receiver. Again he start the message. And he started to give the message again. So this is a cycle system. This is called the process of communication. Process of communication is nothing but a cycle system. The sender is the most important here, receiver is the most important, and feedback is the most important. So that's why communication is a two-way process. Without receiver, without sender, it's not considered that communication. So they are very important. They are the aspects of the communication we can consider that here. They are very important tools to make the proper communication, to make the good communication. They are very important tools. The communication process should be followed that. Now I would like to discuss about that classroom communication. Classroom communication is nothing but is a type of formal education system that face-to-face instructions are given to students. What the instructions we are giving to the students in the classroom, that is called the classroom communication. What is the primary object of the classroom communication? We see that communication is to achieve instructional objectives. That is the primary object of the classroom communication. So what is the definition of the classroom communication? When we see that, it's nothing but is an interaction between the teacher and students in the classroom, that is called the classroom communication. The classroom communication is the most important in the teaching learning process. If it is good, the class is so effective. So that's why we have to focus on the classroom communications. So in the classroom communications, how do we greet the students? How do we start the class? How do we end the class? How do we give the homework? That completely communication process happened between the teacher and students. That interaction happened between the teacher and students. That is mostly effective. Then the students also understand what the teacher said that here. In the classroom communication, who is the sender? The teacher is the sender. And in the classroom communication, who is the receiver? The students are the receiver. We can consider that here. So the interaction between the teacher and students, what happened in the classroom, that is called the classroom communications. So whatever the communication, there are the two types of communications. One is the verbal and another one is the non-verbal communication. Now let us see verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So verbal communication means what here? Verbal communications happens through verbally. The communications begins from what is it? Through verbally, vocally, or through written words. So the verbal communication happens here. Understand here? How does the verbal communication happen? Means the verbal communication happens through verbally, vocally, and through written words. What we express, that is called the verbal communications. Simply, verbal communication is nothing but words, or what we express the words. What we express the vocally, the words. How do we express the words here? From vocally. Means it's nothing but words or sentences. How do we convey these words and sentences? From vocally, that is called the verbal communications. Verbal communication, nothing but verbal happens through vocally, verbally, or through words which express or convey the message. That is called verbal communication. Verbal communication is nothing but it happens through vocally or verbally or through written words which express or convey the message to other person. That is called the verbal communications. So verbal communications are two types. One is that oral communication, another one is written communication. You see that oral communication, orally what we express, that is a oral communication. Now I share the message to that is called the oral communications. Sometimes not orally, we give the message, we pass a message to written by the letters, emails. What we pass a message to other person, that is called the written communication. So verbal communications are two types here. So what are they here? Verbal communication, two types. One is oral communication, another one is non-verbal oral communication, another one is written communications. So oral communication is nothing but what we express through vocal or verbally is called that as oral communication. Written communication is nothing but as written. As now you see, how do you send the message? Through letters or emails and WhatsApp, this is nothing but as written communication, we can say that. What is a non-verbal communication? So non-verbal communication, when we see that, non-verbal communication, any communication without any word of mouth or spoken words, that is called the non-verbal communication. Without the words of the mouth, without words of the spoken, is called that non-verbal communication. How do you pass a message without the mouth? How do you pass a message? Sometimes we use in the ancient times, when we don't create the language, we use gestures, pictures, symbols. Through these, we pass a message to other person. That is called the non-verbal communications. Non-verbal communication is nothing but here, without word of mouth, spoken words, the conversation or written language are called non-verbal communications. Means we don't use the words, we don't use the sentence, we use signs, we use gestures. Understand? We use symbols, we use signals. Like we pass a message to other person, that is called the non-verbal language. Non-verbal language most important in the teaching learning process. Whatever you express, that facial expressions, body language is the most important. The body language, facial expressions, they are also part of the non-verbal language. We consider that. So they are very important to make good communication, verbal communication and non-verbal communication in the teaching learning process here. Now come to the point here. I discuss about that is what the things not to make proper communication. The barriers of the communication. Barriers of the communication. How the communication is stopped by the barriers. What are the barriers to stop the communication, proper communication? So now we are talking together. Sometimes noise will happen. Then the listener can't understand what I send the message. They are called the barriers. So many barriers not to make proper communication. So what are the barriers? You see that here. Listening barriers. Now what I send the message, whether you don't understand, whether you don't listen the class properly, yes, then you understand. You don't understand the message what I send. That is called, that is one point of the barrier of communication. Means listening also, the lack of the listening skills also, you can't understand the message what the sender send it. And second one is perception barriers and oral barriers. Oral barriers also. When I pass a message through my mouth, through my words, whether you don't understand, that is also called as barrier of the communication. It is also stop to make the proper communication. Means here oral barriers also. Speech and language. What the language I am using, whether you don't understand, that is also barrier of the communication. We say that here. Personality differences. Personality difference also. That is also barrier of the communication. And next, verbalism and anxiety also. What I'm saying that here, so much anxiety when I say that, you don't understand the communication properly. The anxiety also is stop to make the proper communication. Is also barrier of the communication, we can say that here. So many barrier of the communication, barrier in communication here. They stop to make proper communication. So when we overcome all the barriers to make good communication in the teaching learning process, I say some important points: daydreaming, disinterest, physical discomfort, economic factor, mental factor, educational factor, organization and religious factor, political factor, social factor, racial factor. These are all the barriers in communication. So when we overcome all the barriers then you can make proper and good communication between the teacher and students. So this is the classroom communication. To make proper classroom communication, we should overcome all the barriers in the communication. So then you can make the effective classroom communication. So I said in the beginning, the communication is the most important in the teaching learning process. When we use proper communication between the teacher and the student, then the class is so effective. Understand? I hope you understand classroom and interactions. In the next video, I would like to discuss with you in the classroom, how do we greet the children? How do you introduce before you begin the class? So these 2 points I discuss in the next video. Thank you very much. Yes.